serious? What is the most disrespectful thing a guest ever did in your home? While we were out, house guests staying with us rearranged our furniture and artwork according to their own taste. Had a friend staying with us for a while. She was trying to get back on her feet. I had just adopted a new kitten. About 10 weeks old. One day, I am standing in the kitchen, talking with said friend when I hear my new kitty meowing. Loudly. But sounds kind of muffled. I proceed to start looking around for her. She sounded distressed. Said friend just stands there, with a kind of crooked smile. So, I asked her where the kitten was. She said she had no idea. The meows are getting less and less. And I am walking all over the place, waiting for the next meow to lead me to her. She was in the freezer. WTF? I pretty much screamed at the psycho. Upon retrieving my shivering, confused and miserable kitten. WTF did you do? She smiled and said, I thought you knew. Cats love to be cold. I told her, well, that's just great. And since she claimed to love and understand cats so much, she will appreciate how cold she would be tonight, on the street out of my house. I told her she had about 10 minutes to get her sheet and get out, or not only would she be getting an ass kicking, I would be calling the police regarding her cruelty to animals. She left. Kitty survived to be 18 years old. The guy who we invited to our weekly poker game after he creepily found out about it from a mutual friend and invited himself. It was around Christmas time. So he brings 2 fruit cakes and tells my roommate and I, girls, in front of our other friends, mostly guys, that the cakes are just for us because they are low in sat fat, his obnoxious way of saying saturated fat, and girls don't wanna get fat. He then proceeded to play like an absolute dickhead, splashing the pot, trying to bet under the minimum, folding out of turn, etc. He was loud and rude and kept saying weird things all night. Just as everyone was getting thoroughly sick of him, he turns to me and asks me if I want to go on a date sometime, in front of about 12 other people. I was not in any way attracted to this guy, nor had I done anything to encourage him to think so. I told him no as nicely as I could. But goddamn it, he persisted. He asked me out again, and said if you say no this time everyone will know it's because you think you're better than me and I'm not good enough to go out with you. Of course, I wanted to tell him that I thought he was an asshole and that's why I didn't want to go out with him. But I didn't want to end up having a ResVU episode based on my gruesome mare dare. I sputtered out something about not wanting to date anyone at the moment and he more or less accepted it and shut up. We never invited him back and we had poker at someone else's house for a while after, just to be sure he wouldn't show up. He later got arrested for threatening to shoot his neighbor over parking spot he'd shoveled out. Relatives stayed at our house over the holidays and went into our room and drawers. When my wife came home, she asked my wife why does she have so much makeup if she doesn't use them, and proceeded to ask if she could have some of the items she found for keeps. When I was about 8, our family did a house swap with another family because they lived near London and we lived near the coast, so it was a change for both families and a cheap way to holiday. One of their idiot kids who stayed in my bedroom peeled off my glow-in-the-dark stickers off my bookcase because they said they were stopping them from being able to sleep. Which is total ducking bullshit because there's no way they could be bright enough to stop anyone sleeping. That was 33 years ago and as you can tell I'm completely over it now. When I was in high school, a couple of friends were staying the night when one of them decided to grab a case of 10,000 airsoft pellets and fling them all over my room. For 10 years. Up to the point where I moved out of my parents' house, I was able to find airsoft pellets somewhere in my room. One of the most blatantly douchey things I can think of. I can't remember who it was. It was a family member. My son was around too and he was getting himself an apple or an orange. He'd get it off the counter, peel the sticker off, wash it, and proceed to peel it or just eat it. Well, as he was washing his fruit, a guest goes to him and takes his fruit, and tells him he's too young to be getting his own food. I tell them I taught him how to get a snack and it's okay if he wants to eat some fruit. They insist that he should ask first, and when he said please, they washed it and prepared the fruit for him. To me that's disrespectful because I teach my son how to take care of himself and he gets so happy when he can do more things for himself. And they took that away from him and made him beg for something that was already his. I had a friend I hadn't seen in years that lives in another state decide to surprise me and fly down when I was 2 weeks postpartum, after a C-section to boot. Strike one. Then she spent the entire weekend hitting on my husband. He's a super laid back guy and even he was wildly uncomfortable. We haven't spoken since. Just rehabbed my first home. We hired a contractor to come hang new doors. He showed up with his kids. Whatever. I guess he couldn't find a sitter. Dude does a mediocre job. Actually ducked up one of the doors and tried hiding it with spackle. I later found the word poopy written on the freshly painted wall in the room his kids were playing in. Pissed in my laundry basket. Racked up $400 in long distance calls. Invited crackheads back to my place. Mom invited a family friend over for lunch. Mom said the friend was coming with their husband and 2 kids. They came with 2 freaking families we did not know. The quiet moment when mom's eyes move in silent subtle horror. Well, my mother had a friend who had the most annoying kids on earth. They literally take food out of our fridge and eat it without permission and splash water in our bathroom and make a mess. And once, her son took sunflower seeds from our kitchen and started eating and spitting the shells on our couch. His mother just looked at him and laughed, and my mother was looking at her like, are you ducking kidding me? Needless to say, this was the last visit. I pick up friends from the airport only to find out that they've invited themselves to stay at my place to save money. They also save money by consuming my food and alcohol and trying to get me to split the bill $5,050 when I've had a Corona and empanada and they had Florida lobster, stone crabs, and those giant fishbowl mugs. No more. You don't have a place. There's a $20 a night hostel down the road. Had 6 in my bed. I know because after they left, a big dig ring was in the sheets. Never threw something out so quickly. My mother was in the middle of her fight with cancer. She had been flown overseas a few times. Was in the middle of chemo and radiation. All while trying to work and take care of my elderly grandmother. She is one of the kindest and most compassionate people in our community, so everyone was rightfully really concerned about her and her well-being. Except for her uncle, who came to the house frequently just to complain about his non-existent medical issues without asking once how she was doing. Even on days when she was laying in a darkened bedroom shivering on a summer day and couldn't come out to greet him because she felt so poorly, he'd still sit in our living room and loudly whine about how his DR told him he'd have to change his diet for his blood pressure. She is the one who patiently listened and sympathized with his bullshit the most, but did he return a pixel of her compassion? Of course not. My mom has been in remission for years now and it still fills me with fury what a selfish narcissistic idiot bastard he is. He's dead to me. Ducked my girlfriend in my bed on my 18th birthday after I went to work. My husband's uncle's wife died. They were married for 30 years. Total sweethearts. And he was devastated. Aunt Dot was wonderful. Everyone loved her. He couldn't cope being alone, so he put an ad out on Match.com and the first woman to reply, he married. She is the definition of white trash. He brought her to our house to stay for a long weekend to help us put in a deck in our backyard and so we could meet her. She decided to buy a puppy on the drive over, which wasn't potty trained. It was a Pomeranian and I thought it was full grown and housebroken. I'm at work when they arrive. I come home to piss puddles all over my living room. With her sitting on my couch on a new laptop he bought her. She wasn't watching her puppy, just letting it roam. I was in the kitchen at first and didn't see what her puppy has done. Within 5 minutes, she told me how Aunt Dot's adult children were terrible and trying to take his money. That they didn't approve of her and on and on. Then I saw the dog. I have 2 dogs myself, but she had locked them outside. Needless to say, their weekend was cut short and left early. They tried kicking my cat because she got too close. This family member knew I had cats before coming to visit and said it was no problem. Needless to say, they've never been invited over again, and anytime they stop by for something, their ass stays on my front porch. Don't duck with my cats. A friend became homeless, so I took him in. He invited his boyfriend from another state to move in with us without consulting me. I didn't say anything because I was terrified of living alone at the time. An ex was stalking me. He got a dog off of Craigslist instead of paying rent. The dog hurt my little wiener dog and I had to deal with rehoming his dog because he couldn't deal with the emotions. He misrepresented the situation to his boyfriend and made me sound like a terrible person. My grandpa was in town and helped me move a futon out of storage to my home so my guests could stop sleeping on the couch. When we came inside, the autistic boyfriend was watching weird furry videos at his computer. I left town for 3 days to visit a friend graduating from basic training. When I came back, they had moved out into another friend's house after talking crap about me. The house was unlocked. There was no water for my dog or cat. Instead of changing the cat litter, they had dumped it right outside the back door. Beer cans were everywhere. I don't know how they could have afforded booze because they supposedly had no money. And a porn magazine was left on my bed. They were there for less than 3 weeks. A couple months later, my friend's lease expired. The couple had not yet gotten jobs. I let everyone else rent rooms from me. When my former guests asked, I was tired of them walking all over me and told them no. Back in my bachelor days, my buddy and I decided to hit the nightlife in some bars in Austin. I was never a big drinker and had a few beers over the course of the evening. He was drinking vodka all night like it was water. Needless to say, he was in no condition to drive across town to his place, so I told him he could just crash at mine. Sunday morning and I'm getting ready for church. Knock on the door and ask if he's okay. Told him he could sleep in while I'm gone if he wants to, but he just says he's got to get going and quickly leaves. Get back from church a few hours later and the entire apartment smells like shit. Sniff out the sauce in the guest bed. Evidently the ducker had woken up during the middle of the night and evacuated a beagle-sized turd into my sheets. Rolled them up and then continued sleeping the rest of the night in the same bed he had befouled. The real WTF, other than sleeping all night next to a rolled up sheet with your own monstrous juice in it, is that he could have just stayed after I left. Cleaned up and I would have probably never known. Duck you. Warren. My sister brought her boyfriend over to my house and proceeded to tell him how I ruined her life because I was born 2 years after her and stole all her attention, and that is why she is depressed to this day. At the time she was 30. Get right the duck out of my house with that nonsense. She'd been saying it for years, but that was the last straw. My health problems, which she credits with stealing her attention, didn't affect me that much and they happened to me. Future mother-in-law started pulling out flowers and vines she didn't like, and to top it off, not clean up the mess she made. Probably the time where my parents let a family member stay in my room for a while and they found my stash of money I was saving. To this day, he lies to my face and sticks to his story that I lost it. My mother-in-law decided it was fine for her to smoke in our house after being explicitly told by my wife that it was not okay. I smoked at the time and even I did not smoke in the house. My friend's husband peed in the hallway when we were all drunk. He said the bathroom was full and he couldn't make it outside to pee on a bush. Next time I saw him, I gave him a small potted plant with a homemade men's room sign stuck in it, and told him now he had a porta potty. The plant died. This happened to my friend. She has a koi pond in her backyard that her and her husband built themselves. It's a nice little pond in the ground with rocks and a waterfall. They also have a couple of cats. They go out of town for a couple weeks and one of her work friends takes care of her house. A few days in, this work friend comes over and dumps the entire bag of cat food onto the kitchen floor. Then she decided that the water in the koi pond looked a bit low. So they turn on the hose to top it off. Only they forget to turn the hose off when they leave. She never comes back to the house to check on anything. A couple days later, The neighbor notices that their backyard is flooded and that there's koi swimming around in the yard. They turn off the water and try to catch the koi but are not successful. The koi end up dying or getting away. Luckily the cats inside were okay. The neighbor calls my friend to tell her what happened. Let's just say that my friend is not friends with her coworker anymore. Edit. I told my friend about this subreddit and how I posted what happened to her and she wanted me to also tell you that a tree that was supposed to be watered in the front yard died because her friend didn't water it. This was a guy I was seeing. My son at the time was 2.5. He had a teddy he brought everywhere with him. It didn't bother me cause kids like comfort toys. Well, this guy had an issue with it. So we're out on my balcony and my son had showed this guy his teddy bear. He had grabbed the bear, threw it over the balcony and told my son to grow up, bears are for babies. Darren, you're a big guy, still cannot stand you. A friend was house sitting for me while I had a long weekend away. They said they would stop by 2 days out of the 5 to make sure everything was good and water my plants. They showed up the day I left. Unplugged my fridge and left. Came home to everything rotten and it smelled like someone was murdered in the fridge. Called and asked what happened and she said she was mad at me because her brand new boyfriend said I was cute. I was in a committed relationship with another woman at the time. Literally the last person to be interested in her scumbag boyfriend. We weren't friends after that and it took everything in me to not go kick her ass. I'm not a fighter by nature but that tested me. I lived in a small house. So my dressing table was a table and wall mirror near the front door. One day we had people over while it was raining. And my husband's cousin came in. Picked up my hairbrush from the hall table. And brushed her wet dog with it. This girl stayed over at my house after the pub. I went to bed with my fella. Woke up. Girl was gone. Walked into the bathroom later that day. Place stank of sheet. Eventually pulled back the shower curtain. There was a jug I use for washing my kids' hair. Sheet sort of half in the jug. Half in the bath? I mean, it was a not enough thing in the first place. But there's a toilet in that bathroom. Which you have to walk past to get to the bath. I got a message on Facebook that evening saying I'm pooped. Thanks for letting me stay. I confronted her and she claimed she had no idea about it. Obviously she's never been invited over since. Had a friend come over once and we drank together. She invited a boy over. I went to bed. Woke up to her yelling. Told her to be quiet, my mom was sleeping. She started yelling at me, duck you. Duck you, BC. The boy she invited over was talking to me more. A boy I had zero interest in. Followed by my mom waking up in the morning to find that my friend had passed out on the couch with all our back doors wide open. I invited my neighbor over one day when we were having a BBQ in the backyard. I was making hamburgers and hot dogs. Neighbor asks for a hot dog with no bread. Then this a-hole walks over to the condiments and unscrews the cap on the squeeze bottle of mustard and just dunks his dog in. He may as well just open the fridge and drink from the milk carton when he's done with hillbilly mustard dog. A couple of years ago, a friend of a friend was going to be homeless. Decided to let him stay at my place for what was supposed to be 2 weeks but turned into 3 months. He would throw trash in the floor. Like directly on the floor and leave it. Walk all over my rugs, Sith muddy shoes on. Smelled like sheet all the time. He would clip his toenails in the middle of the floor and just leave it. Worst experience I've ever had. Due to that, I've never let anybody stay at my home ever again. We said not to eat in the guest bedroom. And when we went in there after they had left, we found ice cream all over the sheets. Also, the same people left flecks of feces in the bathroom sink and feces soiled toilet paper on the bathroom floor on 2 separate occasions.